you my friend? Are you my friend? Welcome back to another episode of Captain's Counseling Corner. If you haven't seen the first video to this, I'm going to put a card right here for you to go check that out, so what I talk about in this video doesn't come out of left field completely. Alright, so we basically introduced in the last video this whole idea and concept of friendship. So when we talk about friendship, it is the purpose of this video for us to start kind of getting into a little bit of the meat about what I introduced in the last video. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to trying to make a persuasive argument, or when somebody is trying to understand exactly where the other person is coming from or what the other person is trying to say, it is essential and foundational to set the terms or find the definitions. And I have to be honest, my whole argument lives or dies based on how people define what a friend is. So the very first thing that we need to do before we talk about anything else, before we can really grapple with what it means to be a friend, we're going to have to first define what it means to be a friend. And so what I want to do is actually tackle that from the reverse. And I want to say, what is not a friend? So the very first thing I want to talk about, and what we're going to talk about in this video, is I want to show you the things that are misconceptions, or what I think people actually believe and call friendship really isn't friendship.
Wad Up is my friend.
So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to lead us down a path to understanding what friendship actually is by defining what it is not. And by doing this, I'm going to start very, very easy. I'm basically going to show a statement that none of us would probably agree to, or we would understand not to be friendship. And then I'm going to go down and go through 5 different ideas of what people might consider friends or friendship, and I'm going to try to show you how these are not, in reality, what friendship really is. And then when we finish with this and we get to the other side, then and only then can we start to actually build up and redefine, because we have to, what friendship actually really should be. To start easy, I said I was going to start easy. Not everyone in the world can you call a friend. And I'm all about loving everyone and having a general care for the humanity in the world, but that's definitely separate than me calling everyone in the world my friend. So let's get past this one. Again, start easy. Let's get a little bit more difficult.
Happy birthday to you.
Just because you work and you are around some of the same people on a day-to-day basis does not make your colleagues or your coworkers your friends. And many times people confuse this because they don't actually have a lot of time outside of work, and it's very easy to blur these lines and consider some of the only relationships you have in your life to be your friends, when in actuality they are not your friends.
How do you like them apples?
However, I'm not saying that people at work cannot become your friends, so that is my disclaimer. But I'm just saying, because you work with people and you are around them on a somewhat daily basis, or sometimes several times during the week, does not necessarily make them your friend. And we will talk about this when we start to define why someone or how someone actually is your friend.
Funny how you call when you need something.
Now, we have all been in this kind of relationship where it's basically one-sided. Either we're on the side of giving too much and they give nothing, or maybe we've been on the side where we are taking too much and we are not giving. But this is what Aristotle called the friendship for the sake of benefit. And by definition, this is not a friendship, because a friendship is reciprocal. A relationship is meant to be reciprocal, right? If it's not reciprocal, then what kind of relationship is that? Ask yourself, if it was in any other kind of important relationship in your life, is that the kind of relationship you would want? Probably not. So usually when we have these kinds of relationships in our lives, there's something that we're trying to hang on to. Something that maybe we had a friendship in the past, but no longer is that a friendship, but we're trying to hold on to that relationship of the past. Or maybe we don't have any other close friends or friends in our lives, so that is the best that we can do, which we call settling. And many of us spend our lives settling instead of going for what we really want.
It happens sometimes. Friends come in and out of your life like busboys in a restaurant.
Now this is where we get into some deeper waters, and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of conflict when we start discussing people that we had friendships with in the past, but for whatever reason life took us in different places. And whenever people ask about who's your friends, or if you have friends, or when you think in your own mind about the friendships that you have, a lot of times it's very easy to connect the past friendships that we had with the current friendships that we have. And people will say things like, oh, I've always been able to talk to them, and if I were to call them right now, we would just pick up right back where we left off. And that may be true, and that is a very true statement. So having a level of comfort with somebody over the years, even if you don't talk for several years, 20, 30 years even, does not make you friends. There's a misconception about this idea. It is possible to have friends that were past tense friends but are currently not friends. And so we get this confusion of, oh, I have this level of comfort with them, and this level of comfort therefore makes me friends. History and having the history of the relationship that maybe you had in the past does not substantiate what you currently have in your life at the moment. So I think just because you may have been friends in the past, or even in this moment, if you have a level of comfort if you were to meet them again, does not qualify them as a friend. And we'll talk about this more later as we start to define the things that are essential to have what is considered a current friend.
I just called to say I love you.
I think more than any other time when I've asked people what they would consider a friend, or how would they define what a friend is, this is probably the most common answer I have received among thousands. And that is, a friend is someone that if I were to call them up at any time, I know I could count on them. And again, just like the one that we just did in number 2, this is only one small aspect of connection between two people. And what I find interesting, that nobody who defines friendship this way or considers this to be like the quintessential definition of a friend, what they don't consider is the current environment and world that we live in. And that is a world where everyone is pretty much independent. And the way that I always challenged the people who said this, at least in my mind if I didn't say it to them out loud, was it's very easy to think of someone that you could call at any time when the chances of you ever calling them in really need is going to be once in a lifetime, maybe, if at all. So let's flip this around and let's imagine and put it into a different context where every morning at 3 a.m., because this person is having panic attacks, they call you up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. on a consistent basis saying, yo, man, I really need to talk to somebody. Or if they even, called you 2 times a week asking for a loan or more money, how quickly would you start having your phone on busy? This is a very interesting way of thinking about it because it's very easy for us to be like, oh, a friend is somebody that I can call up and they'll be there. And it's like, yes, but we never really call our friends that way.
Friend in need is a pest.
We're such independent type of people in our society for the most part that we don't even depend on each other that much where you would actually have to call them. So it's rather easy to make a statement and a connection of what a friendship is in that context where you never really need them. But if you were to put it in the context of where you needed them every day or 3 or 4 times a week, where you're calling them saying, yo man, I really need you. Hey man, can you talk? Hey man, you would quickly discover who actually is a friend and who is not. So I find this a very important one, and I wonder, is this how you have been defining friendship in your life? Or if someone asked you, how would you define a friend? Is this how you would define it? And have you ever thought about it if you were to take it a step further into the context of someone who actually would need you in times of need? And those times of need were quite often. In no way was this list of 5 meant to be exhaustive by any means. It was just to start and begin to define what this idea of friendship really is or really should be. And these are some of the common misconceptions that I have run across whenever I've had this discussion with people or friends of the past, what they consider friendship to be. And as we move on into the future, I really think it's important because many people have not really taken the time to actually sit down and think about it. And as we've all heard the quote, you can't fight an enemy that you cannot see. And so, not that this is war, but this is a war for your soul. This is actually something that most people don't take the time to consider or think about seriously. And I think there's a reason for that, but we'll get to that in later videos. So what I want you to do, actually, if you're invested in this at all, if you're interested at all to kind of consider or go down a road because you just know that something is not right when it comes to your relationships, specifically the friendships in your life. And the thing I want you to do is actually pause the video at this point. And when you pause the video, I want you to ask yourself, in one sentence, how would you define friendship? And if it's more than one sentence, that's fine. But pause the video and just write down somewhere or come up in your mind enough that you can recite it. What do you think friendship is? I would actually be very interested for you to write some of these definitions in the comments below. And I would love to read them and see if they are similar to what I went over in the misconceptions, if they're very different, or maybe this has helped you to create a new definition from what you thought previously. But either way, I'm going to stop and pause the video, and then I want you to either write the comments below or come up on your own with what you would define friendship to be. What is a friend? The final question, and question number 2 that I want you to ask, after you have defined what you think a friend is, the next question is, at this moment, how many friends do you think you have? So pause the video again, think about it if you need to, but think about how many friends by your definition do you have right now? And then the second part, or part B to that question is, how many best friends do you have? So how many friends do you have by your definition? And then how many best friends do do you have? Think about that now. So to wrap this video up for today, because it's getting kind of long, is what I wanted to do essentially was kind of define what friendship is not, so that in the next video we can start to define what friendship is. And I wanted to do that by kind of thinking through or talking about some misconceptions that a lot of people have when it comes to friendship. And what I think is interesting and what I want to leave this video on is that I think we have replaced and redefined friendship as acquaintance. And I think the reason we have done this is because as we grow in technology, as our world becomes global, the ability to fill the requirements of real friendship, or what friendship ought to be defined as, has become more and more difficult as we become more and more independent and scattered from each other socially. And so I think what has happened, in many ways, love has also been redefined from commitment to emotion over the centuries. I also think that friendship has gone from friendship to acquaintance. And so what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to talk about acquaintance versus friendship, and how this redefinition is us settling for something that is ultimately leaving us lonely. And even though we try to fill our lives with things that are other than real, true relationship and friendship, we replace them with things that ultimately, in the end, don't actually fulfill us. And we don't see it, and it's very easy to go through life, including myself, all the time without really feeling the need of what we're missing until times like this, or when you get on your deathbed, actually make you have to feel what you have been missing this whole time.
Every man dies. Not every man really lives.
So instead of only going for what you have at the moment, I want to try to push for us to look for the things that's secret and hidden that we really want, but we don't always pay attention to. So we're going to talk about that in the next video. Once again, I would love to hear your comments below, and I'm looking forward and hope that this is still continuing to push you along, and we're going to start getting into defining, and there is a lot that I have to say about how we need to take the definition back to where it should be, and we'll talk about that in the next video. So as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. This is the Captain saying peace out.